Should be recording now.
Perfect, thank you. Amazing. So welcome to everyone that's currently in the room. It's lovely to see so many of you here. And also welcome to everyone who'll be watching later. We've had a couple of messages from people who would like to watch this after, so we are going to record it just for those who'd like to view it at another time if they've got other commitments at the moment. So for those of you who don't know who we are, we're the Medical Leadership and Management Society. My name is Jacob and I'm the president for this year. So just very briefly, just to quickly introduce you to who we are and who we'll be kind of over the coming year. So we're a new society in Liverpool, and our plan is to kind of support students who've got a passion for medical leadership and management, particularly those who kind of would like to see it as a career opportunity and a career pathway, and where we think there's not really been that opportunity for those students before in the past to follow that pathway. And as well, we'd like to train some of the student doctors to have the skill set that we think could be necessary when applying for things like the Leadership AFP and leadership opportunities in the future as well. So tonight's event is going to be focusing on the Leadership AFP in particular, and we'll also touch on ways in which you can build your med school portfolio towards the end of the session as well, which hopefully will be useful for a wide range of people who are in the audience. And just to let you know, so we've got quite a lot of events coming up over the first semester, some of which will be more useful for different year groups and different people. So just to give you an idea of what's coming up over the next couple of months, we're going to have a talk on leadership journeys for those who are interested in kind of the challenges that people experience in leadership and along the way. Those of you that are interested in intercalating in leadership and management will have a talk on that as well, because we know that's not really very well advertised, generally speaking. So we'll have an event all about that and how to apply and the different opportunities available. We'll also be having a look at presenting at an online conference, because we're aware that that's quite different from presenting in person, and it might be something that's new to a lot of you as well. And then we'll also have a look clinically at one session in terms of looking at leadership in emergency management, and we'll be working with the Liverpool Society on that as well. So I'm going to hand over to Jess now, who's a GP trainee currently in the East Midlands. She was a HLA scholar in 2017, and she now works as one of the HLA mentors. And she's closely involved with the BMA Junior Doctor Committee as well. And she's also done a leadership AFP, so she's got absolutely tons of experience in terms of leadership. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that hopefully she will be able to share hers, and it'll be excellent to hear from her. Thank you, Jess.
Hi everyone. Can you all hear me? Oh. Hi, can people hear me? Yeah? Yeah. Oh, so sorry. Yeah, I know. So my internet is actually now playing up a little bit, but fingers crossed we will get through this. So fab, let me just start sharing my screen. Perfect. So can everyone see the slides? Just as leadership and management AFP on it. Anyone nod just to say that they can see them? Yeah, perfect. Thanks, guys. So yeah, thank you so much, Jacob, for introducing me. All feels very strange, really. So I'm Jess. I'm a GP ST1 in the East Midlands, currently in Nottingham doing my obs and gynae rotation as part of that. So I went to med school in Birmingham. I was there for 6 years because I intercalated in healthcare management and leadership. That was in my kind of penultimate year of med school. And then I went on to do the leadership AFP in, it's called the LNR region, so Leicestershire, Northampton and Rutland. So I did my F1 in Kettering, which is a district general hospital, and then did my F2 in Leicester. So that's like kind of a really quick summary of kind of what I went through in med school in F1 and F2. So I've just finished F2 in August, even though it feels like a long time ago. Obviously, my F2 was impacted by COVID, so I maybe didn't have kind of the full leadership AFP experience, but I'd say I was able to glean quite a lot of leadership experience from that kind of 12 months because of COVID and the kind of unique experiences it brought with it. Brill. So I don't know if I can see you guys. Let me just see if I can do that. It's not very helpful. I kind of just wanted to get an idea of kind of what years you guys were in and who was thinking about applying to the Academic Foundation programme, and specifically the leadership, or if you're interested in the research or the medical education, just to get an idea of who I'm talking to, just so I can kind of pitch it a bit better. Is anyone able to kind of just chip in and say? It's quite a few of you though, isn't there? Is anyone specifically interested in applying to leadership AFP? Okay, that's right. I'll just carry on, just because I think I'm struggling just to hear you guys at the moment. So why should you consider doing the Leadership and Management Academic Foundation programme? So hopefully I'll allude to this throughout this presentation. So you kind of get an idea of why I think it's something that people should consider if it's something they're interested in. Again, I'm trying to keep this presentation quite interactive, you know, just to help people stay awake, because I know it's already dark outside and I know how exhausting it is at the moment. So if anyone, again, could just chip in with what do you think are the key challenges facing the NHS at the moment? Just anything at the top of your head. There are hardly any wrong, I mean, there are no wrong answers.
COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. And so yeah, absolutely. COVID is the big thing. And I'm not going to go into it now because you guys probably know just as much about it as I do. But so we're thinking about COVID, and kind of what aspects of that do you think is creating more challenges for the NHS? If there's anything specific, such as, one thing I think of is kind of staffing issues because people are having to self-isolate. So there's issues around that. Anything else?
So feel free to use the chat function, guys, if you want to submit ideas through there. I think quite a few are coming from there. Jess, I don't know if you've got access to the chat. You should do.
Just having a look now.
Pardon?
Oh yeah, chat. Oh yeah. Oh, I see. Oh,
right. I was in a.
Oh, right. This is helpful. So people are saying workforce planning, burnout, absolutely. So well-being is such a key. It should be a priority everywhere, especially with the second peak coming. Salaries, so absolutely financial resources, they are limited, and we've got to do what we can with the limited resources, and also consider cost effectiveness, management of pandemic, fantastic. High influx of patients, absolutely. So managing capacity and managing how we do elective activity on top of treating COVID patients and kind of preventing that contamination. So infection prevention control is brilliant. Brilliant. Any other ideas? Getting patients home and arranging ongoing support. That is so important. So kind of being able to liaise with the community and making sure people aren't lost to follow up whilst kind of everything's going on is so important. And kind of what I'm trying to highlight with these is that kind of leadership is involved in kind of all these different aspects, and it's important that we've got people involved who have that perspective and the understanding of, you know, being a healthcare worker in the NHS, understanding how to treat and deal with patients whilst also managing all these other issues. Let's go on to the next slide. Aha, there we are. So here I've got an image that I have nicked from the King's Fund, and it is a few years old now. I think this is from 2014, maybe a little bit earlier. And this was created after the Lansley reforms in 2012. So it is a bit out of date now. For example, like the CQC isn't on here, I don't think, but it's kind of their alternative guide to the new NHS in England. And to me, it just highlights how chaotic, how complex, and how kind of difficult this system is that we're working in. Like, it is just impossible. It's impossible just to know kind of like kind of whose responsibilities is who's kind of taking leadership over certain aspects of the NHS, how funding flows. To me, it's just absolute chaos. And it takes time, and you have to kind of study to understand the system. So I did the healthcare management and leadership intercalation whilst I was at med school, and that enabled me to provide like kind of a base understanding of kind of how the NHS works, which helps. But it's like you're forever learning because it's changing every year pretty much. And what I'm trying to highlight here is it's not clear who the managers and the leaders are. Also, it makes it so much more difficult to bring about change in a system that you don't understand how it works, which is frustrating. So what I'm trying to say is, if you were someone who kind of wanted to get involved in leadership and management, that is fantastic. And really, I think everyone who's in this Zoom call should be, but you also kind of have to understand the system in order to be able to change it. And that's where kind of learning, personal development, and kind of getting more experience in the system you're working in really helps. So again, more questions. I hope you can put this in the chat bar again. I want to know kind of who identifies as a leader at the moment. I'm just going to bring up the chat bar. And I know it can feel difficult as a med student to feel that you're a leader, because there's often this misconception that you've got to be a senior doctor, a consultant, a GP in order to be like kind of a leader. But I actually think, we need leadership at every level, from medical student, junior doctor, registrar, all the way up, all through the grades. We need people stepping up and having the ability to be a leader, having those leadership skills in order to bring about change, because people have different perspectives and can think about things differently. Oh, someone's just putting something in the chat bar. That's it. Brilliant. So why should all doctors care about medical leadership? Because regardless of what grade you're at, you can actually bring about positive change for patients, for your colleagues, for the people that you represent. And I'm just thinking back to when I was in medical school. I was involved with the BMA, and I know that we've got the new chair of the medical student committee in this call, because I've seen them pop up, which is fantastic. Congratulations. But you need people to be able to represent the group that they're in order to make sure your voice is being heard. So that's at medical student, junior doctor level. Right, let's go to the next slide. So on this slide, I've just put a very quick summary of what is leadership. So I've done the intercalation, and I've also done a postgrad certificate in healthcare management leadership. So you can study this for years, but literally just a very quick summary of what it is to me, I think it's about having the ability to inspire the people that you work with to work towards a kind of common goal or a vision. And really that is a vision that you're able to communicate and get people on board with. I'm keeping this quite broad because there's kind of lots of different ways that you can think about leadership, even at medical school level. So that's kind of a very quick summary. And I just wanted to mention that what I found quite interested learning about in my intercalation is that those trusts, mostly looking at the work done in America, but I think also in the UK, those trusts who has a doctor as their chief exec has better patient outcomes. And I think that's really interesting. It's difficult to say exactly why that is the case, but there are thoughts that it's because of their unique perspective of they've actually worked on the shop floor. They understand kind of how the system works for their colleagues and for their patients, and kind of can bring that expertise into their leadership role. And so I think that's really interesting. I think we need to be working more to encourage people to encourage doctors and other healthcare professionals to get involved in leadership positions early. it's too late that once they're a consultant, they get on a leadership course. To me, that's too late. They're already involved in, high level decision making and dealing with lots, managing lots of people. We need to start helping people develop early on. And I think it should happen in med school, not when they're a registrar, not as an F1, F2. I think it needs to start sooner so that people can start developing these skills in communication, reflection, and kind of all the leadership skills, which is why I'm quite an advocate for there to be training in med school, and for the option of the intercalation and the option of the leadership AFP, so that people can start developing these skills early. So I just wanted to give some examples of leadership in healthcare, and this slide is a bit of it seems a bit like I'm going up in the hierarchy, and I didn't want it to seem like that, but just so that you can kind of think in a medical sense how you can kind of progress your career as a leader. But to be honest, there's way more options open now. It's not just these, 6 examples that I've put on here, way more opportunities out there, but these are kind of like the standard old-fashioned ways of doing leadership. So absolutely leadership on the ward, so that might be the reg or the consultant being the leading the ward round, but it might also be that junior doctor advocating for their patient on the ward, or leading a handover, or even representing their colleagues at a junior doctor forum. There's all sorts, kind of moving up. So these tend to be more senior people, but you could be a clinical director, which is a doctor. You could be a medical director of a trust. And then in primary care as a GP, you could be involved in CCG leadership, as well as being a GP partner. And as you go right up the hierarchy to national medical director. So I've got an image of Prof. Stephen Powis here, but they're kind of like the obvious examples of leadership that you first think of, but honestly, there's so much more you can do in terms of leadership in healthcare than just what's on this slide. But it's all about kind of creating your own opportunities and being proactive, and kind of being ambitious with what you want to do as well. So I'm going to talk a bit more now about the leadership AFP. So as I've already mentioned, it's a bit more niche than the academic research and the medical education AFP. So I have looked at the UK FPO documents for the 2021 intake, and this is what I could find in terms of where you could do the leadership AFP. Unfortunately, it looks like Leicester has stopped doing theirs, which is such a shame because they had a really good leadership program going. I'm not sure why they've done that. I don't know if it's a COVID thing, which is a real shame, but these are the ones that are available for 2021. As you can see, Oxford doesn't have specific leadership AFP, but I understand they can be quite keen on you creating your own project. So it might be that you want to do a project with a leadership stance on it, such as a quality improvement project. So kind of there is scope to kind of create leadership projects depending on where you go. What I would say is when you are thinking about applying for the leadership AFP or any of the AFPs, to be honest, is kind of, it is worth thinking about geography. And for me, I wasn't that close to my family in terms of distance where I was doing my F1, and I think it's important to have a think about where your support network is going to be, because F1 can be quite hard and it can be quite isolating with the hours that you're doing, on top of being away from friends and family, because you're kind of all spread across the country. So it is always worth thinking about kind of your support network, well, for me anyway, alongside kind of choosing where you want to do your AFP, and obviously making sure that you would be happy kind of where you would end up as part of the academic foundation program. So that's just something to have in the back of your mind when thinking about this, but there are a few options on there. And now I'm just going to talk a bit more about applying to it. So it's a very similar process to the research AFP. You have your white space questions. These are already available on the UK FPA website for the 2021 intake. So you have to complete those, submit your extracurricular activities and your portfolio, and this forms part of your score. And then hopefully you'll be invited to interview. This year it'll be on Microsoft Teams, I believe, so there won't be any face-to-face interviews this year. And again, they will score you depending on how well you do in the interview, and then your scores get added up, and then depending on kind of where you rank, jobs are allocated accordingly. And of course, you've got to do all that on top of, you have to pass your SJT. It doesn't matter what score you get, as long as you are above the cutoff score. It won't impact on your AFP score. And of course, you have to pass your finals and your PSA as part of your application to the UK Foundation Programme. But hopefully that's not nothing new, and hopefully there's not been any changes this year that I'm not aware of. But yeah, so that's that. I wanted just to show you a bit about kind of the white space questions that I had, but as I've said, they're already available for you for this year, so then they will be slightly different. From what I understand is they don't really look into your answers to this that much. It doesn't contribute to your score as much as your extracurricular activities and your interview, but it's still important that you do it to the best of your ability. I tried to I kind of came up with a few buzzwords that I wanted to get in to help me structure my response. So of course I was mentioning about my experience and my training and leadership, that I was proactive, enthusiastic, a team worker, kind of all those skills that are transferable to medicine, but also to leadership and to completing projects, things like that. So that would be my advice for the white space questions. And then I'm going to move on to the interview. So like I said, it's going to be different for you guys than it was for me, because I had a face-to-face interview. But this was the structure of my interview. So I had 2 panel stations, and with each panel there were 2 people, 2 interviewers, and each one was 10 minutes long with a 5-minute break in between, just to have a breather. So my first station was, I was asked in advance to prepare a 5-minute presentation on a leadership project. So I had time to have I think I had about a week's notice, maybe a bit more, to kind of think about what I would want to do, how I design it, and kind of prepare my speech for it. So the leadership project that I proposed wasn't necessarily the one that I was going to do in my academic foundation programme, and actually it was completely different to the one that I ended up doing in my F1, F2. But I guess they're just assessing your ability to think in an academic way, but also to kind of communicate your project ideas. For the rest of that time, they asked me questions about things like any barriers that I'd anticipate, how I'd overcome those barriers, and kind of what skills and experience I had to be able to ensure the project was completed. So things like that. So just have a think about that before going to the interview. And then the second station was more like a traditional question and answer interview station. So these were the questions that I was asked. So kind of these are, I think, pretty standard questions that I would expect in a leadership interview. So qualities of a good leader, how I think I'll go about improving patient safety, how we get more junior doctors interested, and give an example of good clinical leadership that I've seen as a med student. So for this, it's really helpful to practice, and have a few examples of good leadership, bad leadership at the back of your head, just in case they ask you questions about things that you've seen. So like I said, the more you practice, the kind of more comfortable you get about talking about these topics, and it just makes the interview a bit well, not easier, it's never easy, but yeah, it just feels a bit smoother. And it also stands you in good stead for interviews for when you're applying for your specialty training and consultant posts in the future. So really, it's all just really good practice for your career. So now I'm going to talk a bit about the projects that were available to me when I was doing the academic foundation programme. So this is just 3 out of about 8 they had on their website at the University of Leicester. The good thing about Leicester was they had these projects if you wanted to do them, but you had the freedom to choose your own project and in your own supervisor if there was something else that you were interested in, which I think is quite special, quite helpful really. It's important that you do something that you're genuinely interested in, otherwise it just gets boring and painful for everyone involved. So yeah, I just wanted to show you some of the examples. So I'm someone that's interested in kind of junior doctor wellbeing and kind of trade union work. So things like this bottom one, looking at it's called the gripes tool, was something that I was interested in. It wasn't the project that I ended up running with, but things like that, there's all sorts available. You just have to be proactive and kind of find people that you want to work with and find a project that you're really interested in. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the reality of doing the leadership AFP and F1, F2, just so you guys have an understanding of what it involves. So F1 was completely the same as anyone else doing F1 in the hospital that I was in. So I was doing medical on calls, nights, weekends, you know, the normal rotations. So I had 3 4-month-long rotations, and that was my F1. And then F2 is when the leadership AFP became more of a reality for me. So for this, I just did 2 6-month-long rotations. And instead of being full-time clinical, I was about 65% clinical and 35% academic. So that was really nice. There were no nights, no on calls, no weekends, just a basic Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. Like 1 week, and then the other week would just be Monday and Tuesday, for example, and the rest of the time was academic. And honest to God, it was bliss after doing an F1 in a district general hospital. So that was something that I found really helpful. They got me set up as an honorary fellow of the University of Leicester, which gave me access to things like the library and the university. Got a university email address. That always helps with kind of approaching people, because you look more official if you've got like a university email address and kind of an honorary title. I was funded to do the PG certs at Swansea University, which is actually really interesting. I think even though I did my intercalation in med school, having had like a year plus of clinical experience kind of helped me reflect more on kind of what had happened and what I was doing. I was also given £500, access to £500 in order to be able to present posters at conferences, things like that. And just by having my academic days, I could choose how to use them. So it's so much easier to attend conferences, workshops, courses, things like that, because it's not like you're having to find someone to swap with on the rota. It just makes life so much easier. So I really enjoyed my F2. Obviously, COVID happened from March time, which did impact on it. But fortunately, I still was able to complete my PG cert and complete my project. Of course, there was a delay with it, and I've not been able to present it yet. But that was always going to be the case with COVID, because all the conferences have pretty much been put on hold and are now being held virtually. So what I'd say is kind of the more you put into doing your AFP, the more you get out of it. And it's all about kind of being proactive, enthusiastic, and just seeking out those opportunities. They're not always handed to you on a plate, but people are keen to kind of meet up and kind of discuss projects and things like that if you show that you're willing. Brilliant. So this is now my final slide, and I just want to talk about kind of what opportunities there are available to you guys in med school that can kind of help you develop your leadership skills, also boost your CV and boost your application to the Leadership Academic Foundation Programme. So these were kind of things that I'm aware of, and I'm sure there are plenty others out there. So the first thing is University Medical Leadership Society, which, seeing as you're here, so you're clearly interested in kind of being involved in this. So you could be involved by attending the talks and the lectures, or by being a committee member or taking on projects within this. So that's fantastic. And then nationally, we've got the Faculty of Medical Leadership and Management, which is quite self-explanatory, but they have got resources for medical students and junior doctors. I helped develop a medical student elective with them, so you can spend some time in, it depends what time of the year it is, but with organisations such as NHS England or the GMC, and kind of see what they do. To get an idea of kind of what happens outside our bubble of working on the ward or in a GP practice. So they're worth checking out. And they have a committee as well that you can get involved in. They tend to have projects going on. We've also got the British Medical Association, so that's a trade union for medical students and doctors. So they've got the fantastic Medical Student Committee. which holds a special place in my heart because I was the deputy chair of that committee when I was in final year, and I'm still involved in the BMA now as a junior doctor. So lots to get involved with there. Locally at your trust, once you're a junior doctor, you can be like a local negotiating rep, or you could be involved in the regional committee or the national committee. So much to get involved with there. They're always looking for people to help out. And of course, there's the Healthcare Leadership Academy, which I know Jacob mentioned earlier. So if you're someone that usually I think you have to have a bit of experience, leadership experience, and to have kind of experience with kind of projects or campaigning. It is a fantastic organisation to get involved in. Honestly, I was lucky enough to be one of the founding scholars in 2017, I think it was, and the people, you know, it's fantastic, the people that you meet, and it's such a fantastic network, as well as the kind of the workshops, the talks, and the support they give you is fantastic. And I feel like they really do care about their scholars. And what I found is people that have been scholars with the HLA tend to stay on as either a mentor or a faculty member, or they set up a new kind of version of it in their region. So that just shows how kind of supportive they are of their scholars. You can apply to that in med school, F1, F2, all the way through as a junior doctor. So it's not something that you have to rush to now as a med student. That opportunity is available. Obviously, medical school committees, we had like a curriculum and welfare committee at Birmingham. You'll have the same thing in Liverpool, but it might just be a different name. Charity work and voluntary work, I'm sure you've got societies that do that kind of work. You could help by organising events. And then kind of you can do audits, quality improvement projects. There are online courses which are free with the Institute of Healthcare Improvement, NHS Leadership Academy. You could do an elective which has a focus on leadership and management. So for me, I did my elective in London with the Health Foundation, and I spent 4 weeks there helping them with patient public involvement and looking at quality improvement. And I got involved in kind of part of their research work as well as working on their health policy team. So, you know, so much out there. And of course, finally, you can do an intercalation as well, such as at Birmingham, there's the healthcare management and leadership, and there are also intercalations in London, but I'd have to double check which medical school they're with. So what I'm trying to say is that there are so many opportunities out there if you were interested in developing your leadership and management skills, and there are ways that you can build your experience and also kind of showcase it by getting roles on committees or by completing projects or audits, for example. So be proactive and do ask questions of people. I find people tend to be willing to help if you show that you are enthusiastic about what you do and what you want to do. So I think that's the end of the talk. Happy to answer any questions. I think, yeah, what time is it now? It's 7:05-ish. So yeah, plenty of time to ask any questions. I put my email address in there. If you've got any specific questions, you can always drop me an email and I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. So yeah, happy to help and happy to answer any questions. I'll just stop sharing my slides now as well.
So there are a couple of questions on the chat for you, Jess. So the first one is from Zeriab. So he points out, he really sees what you mean about the NHS being so massive. Hospital trusts are massive organisations in and of themselves. I've heard that wards can end up having their own subcultures, which sometimes lead to one person or a few people's views dictating how a ward is run. Is this something you've seen? And do you know who's responsible for making sure the culture and values of a hospital trust are upheld strongly throughout it and not diluted?
I think that's a great question. So from my experience, I find that regardless of what specialty I've been put in or where I'm working, it's the people you work with that kind of enable you to have a good time at work. It's kind of not the work you're doing, it's how you get on with the people. So cultures is such an issue within the NHS, and I think it's such a shame, and you kind of see it between specialties, and then also within wards themselves between kind of healthcare professionals, and it's kind of really sad and disappointing to see. And as a junior doctor, because you rotate every 4 months or so, you kind of it's difficult, because it's difficult to change a culture if you're only there for a few months. It tends to be a bit endemic, and it does tend to be people that have been there for years and years that kind of set that culture, because when new people come in, they learn and they think that that's the way that they're supposed to behave, and then it just kind of passes on and passes on. So it almost needs someone to come in and kind of break that chain, and unfortunately that doesn't always happen. So let me just try and answer the actual question. So yes, this is something that I've seen, especially as an F1, F2. It can be really hard, and it's just about trying to I just try and just be as friendly to everyone as I can, even if you're having a bad day. So is it, other people probably are, and I just try to help everyone, but making sure that you've got your kind of F1, F2 colleagues close by, so that you can remember that that's not just how it's going to be for the rest of your career. So it is the leader who is responsible for ensuring that the culture is inclusive and welcoming for everyone. So if they're not doing that, then there is kind of an issue there, and they need to kind of reflect and think about what they can do to improve that culture. And unfortunately, that doesn't always happen, especially if they've been there for decades and nobody's ever really mentioned anything. But as future leaders yourselves, that is something that you can think about, and you can kind of role model that behavior going forward. And hopefully, as we kind of move on, things will improve, even though some people might think that's a bit of an optimistic or naive way of thinking about things. But I'm hopeful that things improve in the future.
Lovely. And then just one more question from Sophia.
Does that answer your question?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so he's put thanks on the chat, so perfect. And one last question from
yes,
Sophia.
I can see Sophia's question.
Yeah, fab. Where do you see yourself going within healthcare leadership?
Yeah, so that's I really struggle. So throughout med school and F1, F2, I was just so focused on kind of getting into GP training and kind of being a GP in the end. I've not really thought about where I see myself going kind of once I've achieved my goal of being a GP. I know that I will still be involved in other activities. I can't imagine myself being 100% clinical. I'm quite interested in trade union activism. So I see myself being involved in the BMA. I don't know in what capacity. I'm currently on the junior doctor committee, and I've been fortunate to be selected as a negotiator for the junior doctor contract going forward, which is, so that's kind of like opportunities that you can get involved in with the BMA. But maybe in the future I'll be involved in the GP committee, who knows. In terms of my GP work, I see myself being a GP partner, which will be exciting and different to what we've done throughout med school and F1, F2. So certainly utilising different skills and different knowledge, possibly involved in maybe kind of CCG leadership, or I don't really know beyond that at the moment, but I'm keeping open-minded, and I'm sure opportunities will present themselves, and I'll go for it. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Sorry, we've also had a few questions being had as well, if that's okay, Jess. Okay to read them out?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know that you've said before that you did intercalate, but I've had a question saying, did you intercalate, and whether that helped you with your application for AFP?
Oh, Emily, I'm so sorry. I think my internet went then. Is it right if you repeat it?
Sorry, yeah. So I know you said before that you did intercalate, but they've asked whether that helped you with your application for AFP.
Okay, I think the question you said was you asking if the intercalation helped?
Yeah, with you.
I'm so sorry about my internet. It's really frustrating. Absolutely, yeah. It did because that year was obviously just purely intercalation. It gave me kind of the time and space to take on other opportunities, as well as learning about the NHS, as well as kind of learning. I learned more of the academic skills associated with it, such as like writing essays, poster presentation, kind of creating and preparing a dissertation, for example. So in one sense, I've kind of learnt the academic side of things, but it also kind of helped me create a bit of a network of like-minded people, and also kind of contacts. So with my supervisors and we have a department at Birmingham which specialises in healthcare management and leadership. So I touch base with them. And in terms of development, it certainly helped me with like kind of reflecting how I can be a better leader and a better manager going forward.
So on that as well, they've just asked whether you think that it's a disadvantage for AFP if you didn't intercalate.
No, it shouldn't be a disadvantage at all. They're not expecting you to have an intercalation. I was just fortunate enough to be able to do that. But it's an opportunity for people who are interested to kind of get a taster in research and in leadership. So if you show that you have been enthusiastic during med school by taking on some maybe committee positions, or you've done a few, it can even be really small audits or quality improvement projects or a poster presentation. It's the fact that you're showing that you're enthusiastic rather than the fact that you've been published or that you've got a BSc or anything like that.
Great. And then just also whether you thought that 2 years would be enough to bulk up your CV with AFP.
Absolutely, definitely. 2 years is definitely enough time to start preparing for applying to things like the academic foundation programme. Like I said, it's just about, I keep saying it over and over again, being proactive, getting involved in things that you're interested in, even if it's just taking on a small committee position, completing a project. Like I know I keep saying it over and over again, post presentation, there's all sorts you can do in 2 years. Absolutely. I think if you were saying if you've only got 6 months, that would be more difficult. But I think 2 years, absolutely.
Great. And then we just had one last question. So I know you talked about the different questions you can find online for the AFP interviews, but there's just someone asking about your experience with the interview and how you went about preparing for it, and then if you had any knowledge about the clinical skills stations.
Okay, so I didn't have a clinical skills station, which I was quite surprised about. I thought I would, until I found out during the when they sent us the preparation documents that I wouldn't. In terms of preparing, I used a book. It's like it's called Medical Interviews. I've not had it out for 3 years now, so I can't remember it, but it's like the front cover's black and white. I don't know if anyone knows which book I'm talking about, and they can possibly post it in the chat. But it's like quite a famous medical interview book, so I just practiced with that. Some of it is aimed at people who are applying for consultant jobs, so you can just miss that bit out. But a lot of it is relevant and could come up during your interview. So practice with, I don't know if your med school has kind of a careers officer who does mock interviews with you, but also you could do it with your friends who are also applying for AFP, family, things like that. So I used the book for that. And obviously with my presentation, I prepared that in advance, and again, just practiced doing that 5-minute speech beforehand, so I felt confident and comfortable when I was talking about it, and not having to read constantly off a note page, because that isn't so, doesn't come across so well during the interview. Was there any other questions associated with that? Did I answer them?
Yeah, they were all the questions that I got emailed. I think
Brilliant.
a question through on the chat as well. They've just said if you can read it on the chat. This just says in terms of applications for AFP, this person's in.
Yeah, so this question.
Yeah.
Okay, so my advice would be, and I know this is a painful process, I know, you have to be able to kind of have proof for the things that you are including in your portfolio. So for example, if you have, won an essay prize or presented a poster or presented a talk at med school or anything, it's always really helpful to have a certificate or a email from someone saying that you've done it, or even better is having like kind of feedback from the people that were present. And so that's all really helpful evidence. I'd put in as much as you can. Don't worry about boring people, because that doesn't tend to be the issue. What's more important is that you don't put anything in that's false, because then that would look really bad if they figured out that what you put in was not true. And that would be more detrimental to you. So I'd put in as much as you can that you have evidence for, and don't worry about how long or big it is. But what I would do is I'd prioritize what you feel is the most important stuff for you in your portfolio, and always have a contents page as well to help people when they're flicking through, trying to find certain pieces of documentation. Is that helpful, Harrison? Is that all right? Oh, perfect. Was there another question from Zariab? I'm so sorry if I've just said your name wrong. You've mentioned about the culture question again. You mentioned it would be the leader that's responsible for maintaining culture. Who would that be? Just in. So really, it is everybody's responsibility, but it does tend to be. So what I say by the leader on the ward, that would be, it would be like the consultants and the senior regs who are there for a long time, alongside the senior nursing team as well. That's kind of who I was hinting at by saying they're the people that can set the culture on that ward or trust or GP practice or whatever it is, whatever environment you're working in. That was kind of who I was thinking about as being the leader, because they are people that are there permanently and they tend to be there for a long time, and they tend to be decision makers as well. So they tend to set the culture. However, like I said, it doesn't have to be that way, and it is everybody's responsibility to kind of do their bit to help it be an inclusive, approachable, welcoming, friendly culture for everyone working there. Yeah, does that help? Oh, thank you. No worries.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jess. I think that's all the questions that have come through on the chat and the ones we've had emailed in. So that was really useful.
No worries.
I'm just going to quickly share my screen. So
Brilliant.
On that
I'm
is
happy I could help.
link. Is the link for the feedback. I've also posted it in the chat. It'd be really helpful if everyone could fill it in. That would be amazing, both from our point of view as a society in terms of knowing what kind of events you're enjoying, but also from Jess's portfolio point of view as well. And we really hope you all enjoyed the event and found it useful. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. So in terms of access to the slides, if Jess is happy for us to do that, if you provide your email address on the feedback form, which we've just posted in the chat, we'll send them out to you individually.
Thanks, everyone. I hope that was helpful. And like I said, I am happy to help if you do want to drop me an email. I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. Just bear with me if I'm on nights or on call or anything like that, though. But like I said, I'll try my best.
Thank you.
And good luck, everyone. Good luck with everything in the future.
Thank you. Cheers.
Perfect. Stop.
I was going to say thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Oh no, it's thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming and speaking for us. We really
No, it's
appreciate
all right.
it. It was
No,
absolutely